Rosanna, welcome back. This is the final session of the day, which has been an absolutely packed day. I want to thank Ellie for joining us for this session. Ellie Proffitt is the Education and Youth Engagement Manager at ChildNet International. And we all know that internet now has been a lifeline for school staff and students during the lockdown, but the online world is a place where lines between professional and personal can be easily blurred. So this session, we will discuss how to manage our online reputation and how to safely communicate online with our school community. So welcome, Ellie, and I'll just hand over to you.
Thanks, Angela. Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. I hope you've had a fantastic day so far. I'm just going to share my screen and we can get started. Okay. So hopefully you can see my presentation. I can't hear any shouts or protests, so I'll assume you can and I'll carry on. Okay, so I'm going to move myself up here too, so I'm looking at the right screen. Okay, so I am Ellie Proffitt and I'm the Education and Youth Engagement Manager at ChildNet International. Just a little bit about us and what we do. Our mission is to help make the internet a great and a safe place for children, but part of that includes supporting those who work with children, which is what I'm here to talk to you about today. We want to promote the positives of the internet. We don't want to scaremonger, we don't want to demonize the internet, but we do want to respond to the negatives so that everyone is equipped with the tools to keep children safe online and themselves in this case. We also form part of the UK Safe Internet Centre along with 2 other partners. Our big event of the year is every February, so it's coming up soon. It's called Safer Internet Day, and just a quick plug here. We'd love everybody at your organisation and everyone in schools to take part. You can sign up as a register and we have free education packs to support the day too to download that are out now. So that's a brief overview of us, but let's get stuck in because we haven't got masses of time. I'm here to talk to you today about staying safe online. And I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to really focus on this with those working in schools. We often work with young people, we go in and deliver staff sessions. Professional reputation is a small part of our regular staff sessions, so I'm really pleased that we can really focus on this in the next half an hour. What we're going to look at is your personal use of the internet, that context. We'll look at the professional use that you might have or might be thinking about, and then we'll look at reporting as well. And just a caveat to everything on the other side of the screen there, online safety is a safeguarding issue. There's no 2 ways about it. All of the advice is a best practice guide, but sometimes a case-by-case approach is needed. It's not necessarily a one-size-fits-all thing. So let's get started with how you might be using the internet in your personal context. So that's thinking about if you go online and you purely want to use it to communicate with friends and family, use it for your own entertainment, browse the internet, do things for you, regardless of your teacher or school staff context. So a couple of risks have appeared on screen now. And the first risk, even with using it in a personal use away from your educational kind of context, is personal information. So this is those key facts and figures that could identify who you are online. This can be revealed a multitude of ways. It's not often that you'll just go and post your credit card details online. Most people have kind of gotten over doing things like that, but there are other ways that it can get leaked online, which we don't want to happen. One way that we sometimes hear about is in bios of social media. Here we've got the UK Safer Internet Centre Instagram account up. You can see my mouse there. And one way that sometimes people accidentally share personal information is through their bios, the little blurb about you that you can fill in. And even if you had a private account, your bio is always public. So choose this very carefully and make sure that it reflects a good online reputation, which we'll come to later, and you're not revealing anything that you don't want to be out there in the public domain. Because even though we're talking about your personal use, as we were saying in that introduction, the internet is where personal and professional lines can get blurred, and we wouldn't want something that you think you posted privately getting out in the wider world and affecting your educators, your professional life. So think carefully about bios. That's on Instagram, but it actually applies to lots of social media. Photos, indicated by this icon. Be aware of what information you might be sharing accidentally in photos. What's in your background? What's in shot? Have you taken a screenshot of something and something else is visible on the screen that you don't want the wider world to know about? In school, when we talk to young people, we often use the example of sharing your school logo on your uniform, revealing where you go to school. Kind of similar for teachers, you know, accidentally revealing a lanyard might give away where you teach, or your, you know, your full name that you don't want to be out there in the wider world. We've also got location, so be aware of where you're tagging yourself into, checking yourself into. Going on holiday, do you want everybody to know exactly which resort you have gone to? Would you be happy if that information got taken and leaked further with your students, with your parent community? Do you want them all to know where have you been on holiday? So just think carefully about where you're checking or tagging yourself into as well. Kind of linked to this area, we've got oversharing and personal insights. So this is when you might be sharing things that aren't necessarily personal information, but just snippets of your personal life that you wouldn't want your school community to be aware of. You want to maintain that professional personal boundary. So think carefully perhaps about what you are sharing on your personal accounts, because even if you're using them in a personal way, even if you're absolutely sure no one from your school is following you, there's always the chance that something gets screenshot or taken a photo of and shared outside of your private accounts. There's always that chance. This is why we have to be really careful, particularly when you're a teacher and looking after that boundary between your personal and professional life. So personal insights might just be, you know, how your background looks, what your home life is like, who you live with. So be wary of those too. Closely linked to this is online reputation, how you're coming across in the online space. And like we were saying, even personal use can get taken and leaked further and blur into your professional life online. This person here has shared something just a bit silly. It could be worse, about accidentally sharing a link in the presentation, but it's obvious she's a teacher. She's talking about virtual learning. She is quoting someone else calling her Mrs. Moore. So we get the sense she is a teacher and she's done something a bit silly. She shared it online. Not the worst thing in the world, but it could be a lot worse. And who else is seeing that? Who else is potentially sharing that on to other members of people in her school, let's say? So be aware of everything you're posting. Are you happy for your senior management to see it, for your parent community to see it? And finally, I'll just talk briefly about friend requests. The general rule of thumb is not to accept friend requests from current students, because then they would have access to everything you posted in your personal account, regardless of whether you've had it public or private. They'd have access to that. Think carefully as well about parents accepting those as friends online. And I appreciate in some smaller communities, it might be quite difficult to not do that, particularly if you're, let's say, for example, a very small rural community. You might have already been friends with some of the parents of students at your school, and it becomes a bit of a trickier subject when later on their children come to your school and perhaps they're in your class. I suppose the thing there is being aware of who's following you, being aware of what you've posted, and just keeping that in mind. Even though it's a personal account, you've got people on there who are aware of you in your professional context. So briefly, just to recap some further advice here: choose your profile and your bio carefully. Are you happy with those to be shared with the wider world? Avoid linking your work email to your personal social media. That might be one way things get suggested to you, or people get suggested to you, or you get suggested to other people online. So keep those separate. Don't reveal your personal information online, and think carefully about your private content, those personal insights that you wouldn't necessarily want your school community to be aware of and you want to keep private. Review your privacy settings regularly. I'll take you through those in a moment. And not accepting friend requests from current students. So looking at privacy settings now, I'll take you through the basics first. So in general, you're looking for these sorts of symbols that should take you to your privacy settings. Then you start with the basics. In general, that's whether you want to be private or public. We'd always recommend private because you get a lot more control. Often it's just a case of toggling it to private. Most of them are public by default, so do go in and check those. Next, it might be something a little more specific based on what account you're looking at. For example, this is from TikTok. You can change who can send you direct messages, for example. And finally, this is specifically about your location. You can turn off location settings across the whole of your device, your phone, your laptop. However, it might make some apps redundant. For example, the weather map apps rely on having your location. So instead, what you can also do is go in and toggle them off app by app. So you could leave it on for the weather, turn it off for Instagram, let's say. Okay, moving on now to using the internet in your professional context. And here I'm talking about when you're going online and you're making it obvious and clear you are a teacher or you're a member of school staff and you're using the internet in that way. You're not trying to hide it, you're actually utilizing that. And there are lots of teachers and educators who've done this in a really positive way. Especially during lockdown as well, people used it to do, obviously, remote learning. People were sharing things with parents, and this person was sharing a workshop for parents at home on YouTube. This is a kind of teacher influencer who was sharing a tour of his classroom, showing how he'd set it up for social distancing. Another teacher here, he's one of the most followed kind of social media teachers around, and he's sharing things about vocabulary. So actual learning content is being shared too. So loads of positive examples, and I think it's a really great thing to keep that in mind. And remember not to demonize the internet. If we can use it in a responsible and safe way, it can be an excellent teaching tool as well, and a networking tool too. However, we are here to talk about risks as well. So I'll just take you through some of those to think about. Firstly, if you're using it in a professional sense and you're sharing that you're a teacher, I've seen a lot of teachers on TikTok recently sharing images where the camera's faced on them. Can't see any students, but you can hear them. And this teacher here is doing like a countdown, getting students' attention, showing the camera how she does that. And you can hear the call and response with her class. Some accounts share the backs of students' heads. So not their faces, but the backs of their heads and the backs of their kind of shoulders and the school environment. And some accounts share students' work and maybe a bit of tongue-in-cheek, you know, rating them on how funny they are, how sweet they are, how silly they are. So that is a certain risk that's going on. And I'd really encourage people to think carefully about doing anything like this. There's a big question here around consent, whether those young people are aware their voices or their images are being shared online or their work. Are their names linked to that? If they're aware their teacher is filming them, is that a gateway to then going online to find out what this example here is sharing? They might not be of the right age to join TikTok, just 13, but if they hear their teachers doing it and they're on there, obviously out of curiosity, they might want to go and join in, and then you've accidentally introduced younger children to using TikTok where they shouldn't really be. Down here, I've mentioned joining in with student social media use. So you sometimes see teachers joining in with dance moves with their students online. It can be really positive. I've heard of a story where a teacher used it on purpose at the end of every day to wrap up and kind of boost morale in his classroom, and it worked well for him. But there are other concerns that if you join in with student social media use, are you encouraging social media use in school, whereas in fact they might not actually be allowed their phones, let's say. And there's also the fact you've given a student in your class your image or your video, and you don't know what they're about to do with that. They might totally change the context and totally change the meaning to something that you're not particularly happy with. School environment background, back to this positive example, here he is again, but you could see just how easily it would be to accidentally share students' names or students' work, or even students themselves walking past in this video. So there's a risk there too. And finally down here, online bullying. This is sadly a risk for those of you working in schools. It might be from colleagues, from students, from parent and carer community. But I've used a specific example here of the non-consensual taking and sharing of images and staff. So a pupil might be sat in your classroom, take an image of you without you realizing, post it online, and then be making fun of you, sharing adding text or adding emojis that again change the meaning or make insinuations. And there's been a trend recently, you might have heard of this on TikTok, about school edits or school videos or school accounts where this is going on. Students are posting images or editing videos of their teachers and painting them in a negative light. Advice with this sort of issue, consult with your senior management team on social media use in the classroom. If you're planning to do something like that, if you want to do something like that, I think it's best to seek the advice of SMT. And if you're already sat there thinking, I can tell what they'd say, that's giving you a good idea on whether you should be doing that in your classroom in your particular setting or not. Creating separate personal and professional accounts, and probably best not to follow your personal account from your professional account. Young people are very clever. They would look through followers and be able to guess which of those accounts might be your personal one. And then it's that gateway to sharing more of your personal life with students when you probably don't want to do that. Not sharing personal information or insights on your professional account. Keep it professional, keep those two separate as much as you can, so you're maintaining that professional boundary. Think carefully about whether you allow students, parents, carers or colleagues to follow you on professional accounts like that. If you do, like I said, it's a gateway to further personal communication. However, if you're thinking you only wanted it to be a kind of account for everybody else apart from your school, you wanted to use your account in a way that's a bit more sort of abstract and distanced, it just might not end up that way because of the nature of the internet. Everything's connected, everything's shared and linked. And as soon as one person finds out that you have a professional account, no doubt the rest of the school will follow. If you allow them, think carefully about what you're posting and all the above advice. And the last one here, report and address online bullying. So this is specific guidance around the trend that's going around at the moment, because I know so many schools have encountered issues with this where non-consensual images have been taken. So let me get to the next slide around advice for this one. So firstly, referring to school acceptable use policy around tech use in the classroom. Does it refer to taking and sharing of images, both for students, but also for staff as well? And if it doesn't, that's probably time to reflect and think, well, how are we managing that in school? If you notice it doesn't mention it, take that to SMT and work together to figure out the best way to rework that policy. Make sure that the whole school know and they're all on board. Make reporting clear and safe to students. We hear stories where schools are aware of images of teachers being posted online, but they can't get to the bottom of who is behind the anonymous accounts. And it makes it really difficult to tackle. Often there will be students out there who know exactly who are behind those accounts, but they're scared to come forward for being a snitch or a grass. So making reporting really obvious, really clear, telling students what will happen next if they do come forward. Even things just as simple as a picture of who they could go to and what their office hours are can make a really big difference. Approaching that issue from different angles. There's the obvious cyberbullying angle, and assemblies and workshops can work really well with that, but there might be another angle that's also helpful to do around consent and respect, and tackling that way as well. Supporting staff well-being, to have your image shared online without your consent, to have students talking about you online can make your work environment a really uncomfortable place to be. So it's really important to seek support if you're going through that, or offer support to other colleagues who might be going through that, and just make sure they know that school community are there for them. And clarifying the reporting process to staff. Let's say you're sat at home of an evening, you're scrolling online and a friend sends you a video and you're appearing in it. What do? Do you report it there and then using your personal account? Or do you wait, report it to school and report it under an account that's signed up under a school address? I can't give you the answer because every school's context is different, but it's about clarifying that. And if you're not sure, if you're worried about that, ask your SMT. If there's no procedure in place, ask to have one in place and perhaps work together to think, well, what is the best way that we could tackle that, taking a proactive approach to this issue. And finally, I'll go through reporting, like I've just mentioned there. So reporting, we talk about reporting in two ways. Reporting as in telling someone else and getting support, but there's technical reporting as well, where you're using the safety tools on social media to report something to the social media safety team and getting them to either take it down or act upon it in some other way. The first reporting tool that I'll make clear to everybody now is the Professionals Online Safety Helpline. You've got their email and their phone up there on this slide. They're a fantastic helpline. They're one of our partners actually run this helpline. If you've got any concern about an online safety issue, whether it's about you, your students, your school, whether you think you know the right thing to do, but you just want some reassurance. They're a great resource to be aware of and to use. Please use them. They're available Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and they have really helped schools who have got into difficulties with a social media or other online safety issue. Other ways to report. I'll just give you a general overview here. When you are online, you might see something, you think it shouldn't be there, you think it breaks terms and conditions, you can alert the site safety team. Usually the way to do that is to look for one of these symbols, a flag, or the ... that you see here are quite common. Then you choose a reason for reporting. Why do you think that piece of content shouldn't be there? There's actually quite a lot more on some sites than you first sort of might realise. Then some sites will ask you to add a little bit more information. So on YouTube, for example, you can timestamp the exact moment you think shouldn't be appearing and then add some details. That's quite a helpful one to know about. And then you submit it and it goes to the site safety team for review. Now, hopefully you'll get a response and they will do something about it. However, you might not get a response in some cases, or you might get a response but you're not particularly happy with it. Maybe it's just saying it doesn't break our terms and conditions, we're not taking it down, but you know there's more context to it that means you really think it should be removed. So if you don't get a response, or the response you get is inadequate, you can escalate your report here. This is the report harmful content reporting page. You have to have tried reporting something yourself first before you escalate it here, but you can do that once you've reported it yourself, and they will take it on further for you. You can see all the different apps that have signed up to this service. So it's great to see industry are on board with this and they want to be helping individual users make reports and get the most out of their services. So that's really good to know. And 2 other websites to be aware of, slightly separate topic, but I think it's important to raise these whenever I can because they're so important. The first one is CEOP. CEOP's remit is grooming. So if you are concerned about a student or concerned about someone online who's acting as in a kind of suspicious way, if you're worried about online sexual abuse potentially happening with a young person online, you can report them to CEOP, and it's anonymous. And there's also the IWF. These are one of the 3 partners that we are partnered with. And if you ever stumbled across this kind of content, which is child sexual abuse imagery, you can report it here. It's very unlikely that you would stumble across it because they do incredible work tackling it, but it's good to know about, particularly when you're working in a school in that kind of child protection centered environment. And that is the end of my session. I've magically gone within the time, which is fantastic. And I've realized I've whizzed through, but I'm more than happy to answer questions. I've got my email up here if anyone wants to contact me later on, but thank you so much.
Lovely. Thank you very much for that, Ellie. And we can't emphasize enough really how important this session is for all teachers, young and old. And I think one of the things that young people, I know my own youngsters are getting more aware of the fact, that they have to be safe online for themselves in their own personal accounts. But unfortunately, what happens very often is that their friends are not aware of it. And, as you said, you can sometimes get tagged in things that are not appropriate or whatever. That's one of the things. So please, you need to tell all of your friends that you are a teacher, that in schools now you have to be very, you have to be very careful about what is put up and what your image is. And particularly in Wales, if you teach in Wales, we have what's called the Education Workforce Council, and one of the ways that they can become involved unfortunately in a disciplinary way is using things that are on social media. So you have to be very careful of that. And schools, I think, because we all moved to online teaching, they upgraded their safety policies for use online. So please, if you haven't already had a look at your school's social media policy, and their online safety policy, get it, download it. If they haven't got one, then you need to tell them they need to get one. And there are places that they can look at to help with that. This is one. Obviously, the unions are another. Many school leaders are in NASUWT. We will help with that, and also the other unions will as well, and also, of course, the local authorities. They will help with that as well. And very often there are limitations. When you were talking then about social media accounts, we have them in schools. In my own school, departments will have social media accounts, but there are absolutely strict guidance about what you can put up and what you can't put up on those. And sometimes there are only certain classrooms that can be used. And you mentioned there about pupils. Every parent has the right to say that their child can't be, their image can't be used. So that's something else you have to look at, isn't it, when you're doing that. And finally, schools should, in their behaviour policy, absolutely have in there a clause about if pupils abuse any member of school staff, but particularly us as teachers, or use our image without consent. So if you find that your image has been used, or you have been abused, or whatever it is online, then the school absolutely has a duty of care as your employer to make sure that they can, and they do, use their behaviour policy and their disciplinary policy with regards to pupils. So it's you can't, just because we're teachers, we're not up for any it's not something that is part of the job. If somebody does abuse you in any way, shape or form, then you report it straight away through, as Ellie said, but also to the school, so that the pupils should be dealt with. So anyway, right, Ellie, that was absolutely fantastic. We will filter any questions into you to you. I see that Jennifer has put a really useful link in the chat about guidance for social media and online abuse. There, our link there. So please make a note of that and keep that, and also the links that Ellie shared. Thank you very much, Ellie, for your slot here. I am going to round up the conference now, so I do want to thank all the speakers of the day. It seemed a long time ago that we were listening to Paul this morning, but thank you to Paul for his session, and to Jane, our Deputy General Secretary, for coming and sharing the way forward of the union with us. Thank you very much for that. Thank you to Claire and the excellent panel that joined Claire just before lunch, and for Claire Ward for chairing that panel. That was a really useful panel. Jennifer, thank you very much again for coming and doing your Q&A. And we, as we said, that will form how the direction of the union with our work with young teachers over the next 12 months. And to Annie and Sinead and Ellie for this afternoon sessions. All of you know, I learned so much from these conferences, and I've been absolutely blown away by the quality of our presentations today and the questions. And I do thank you very much for joining us in our online conference. And let's hope that we can have a physical online conference, not an online conference, a physical conference next year. We have got one, I think, a date in the diary. We'll be letting you know when that is, and that will be in Birmingham. So look, from me, it's a big hwyl fawr. I'm off to top up my mental health and well-being now, because we've got our staff party tonight. Woohoo, whoop, whoop. So that's where I'll be going in a couple of hours, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday, everybody. So hwyl fawr I chi gyd. Goodbye, everybody, and thank you to all the background team for putting this on. It's not an easy thing to do. Thank you very much to everybody. There's too many of you to mention, but I will be thanking you personally, hopefully. Right. Anyway, joio, everybody. Have a nice rest of your Saturday, and hwyl fawr i chi gyd. Bye bye. Bye bye.